Hey everybody, welcome to Meddkit's Provider Spotlight, where we are interviewing the most amazing private practices from all over the United States. Every week we come here and we talk with someone brand new perspective, totally different specialty every single week, and we have a blast. A lot of great information is shared here, and we are always telling the stories of these amazing private practices. And so today I want to introduce you to another amazing practice owner, Dr. Mike Wampfler. He is the owner of Premier Chiropractic. And Dr. Mike, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, I'm excited to, hear more about you. And kind of what I love to do in the beginning here is really start out with the origin story. I think, people are really interested in, how you've gotten started, what inspired you to, open up your practice, get into chiropractic care. Would love to hear from you on that.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short. The shortened version. So, as a child growing up with my uncle and my grandparents on their farm, they would always go to a chiropractic office, and they were always excited to go. They couldn't wait to go, and so the anticipation, I could sense that. And my uncle's brother-in-law was a chiropractor, and he showed me how to push on my uncle's back, and I thought I was just blown away. Wow, that was cool. I made a noise. I had no idea, obviously, what I was doing. Um, and I didn't charge him for it, so I couldn't get in trouble, right? But so right away, I had as a child a chiropractic, like I thought this was a good thing to do down the road. And then I started going to undergrad, and I was a little immature, and I was hanging out with my friends too much, and I basically said, okay, I'm not getting anywhere, so I got a job. I started working, and then I met my wife, which was a huge blessing in so many ways, because one of the first things she says is, I want to be a chiropractor. And I'm like, oh, I knew I needed to marry this girl. And so she actually went to chiropractic college before I did. While I was working, she was going to school, and she opened our practice first, and here in the same town that we grew up in. So she started the office, and then once I got licensed finally, a couple of years later, and she started having more kids, and pretty soon it was easier for her to, well, not easier, but it was more necessary for her to be at home with the kids. And so that led me to be the only doctor in the office. So not that
Wow.
I kicked her out, it's just this how it kind of worked that way. So
That is terrific. What a great story and so serendipitous. Like, it's what you always wanted to do and then found the best match for yourself. And they also wanted to do what you wanted to do. So
yep.
really, really, really unique, really cool story. And in terms of, the folks that you see today and your patients, what would you say people are most commonly struggling with? Like, what do you feel like people are coming in with day in, day out? What's been the toughest thing you've had to address?
Oh yeah. Well, we see patients from 2 days old all the way up to 99 years old. So we have the whole gamut of every age group, every profession you can think of. Usually, most people come in originally with some type of pain, whether it be in the back, the neck, or numbness, tingling, those types of things. What bring them in, things like fibromyalgia, conditions like that. That's what brings them in to start with, but they typically stay because of our unique method of correcting the spine, and they see the long-term benefit. It's not just get them out of crisis, it's actually doing some long-term correction.
That is amazing. And kind of diving into that just a hair more, would love to hear about your approach. Obviously you're always interested in getting to the root of the problem, the cause, but are there, are there other modalities that you're using in the office that you've been like, wow, this is life-changing. This has been so helpful to my patients, or anything else that you do within your approach that you found to be just extremely successful?
Yeah, if I forget to go back about the modalities, remind me. But I,
I
I would start with the method of chiropractic, because if you've ever been to three chiropractors, you realize that all three are different. And even if you were to be adjusted by my wife, same technique, same table, same philosophy, same school, there's the art of it. And so it's going to be a little bit different with each and every chiropractor. So there's at least 100 named techniques that a chiropractic student can decide, hey, I want to do this technique. This kind of fits my philosophy and how I can physically do it. So when my wife was in school, she worked at the research department, and she said she would ask the researchers why are some of these patients, by looking at their X-rays, keep getting worse. Their X-rays, more and more arthritis, more and more degeneration, and this one looks pretty good, and they've both been getting adjusted for 20 years. So like, what's the difference? And they kind of gave not a real clear, this is the answer. It was more of, well, and it was like kind of the genetics excuse. And genetics is not something that really people can argue with. There's definitely a genetic component.
Sure.
But when you would have half the neck that had arthritis and the other half didn't, well, I'm pretty sure the genetics is the same in one half of the neck as the other, right? And it wasn't just age, because they're all the same age, the same vertebrae. So it wasn't age, or it wasn't genetics completely, or 100%. So like, it made her ask more and more questions, and they couldn't answer them, even at the research department at the number one chiropractic college in Palmer College in
Wow.
Davenport. So it led her to asking other techniques. What do you think? Why is this happening? Why is this happening? And eventually, chiropractic biophysics, which is the technique that we practice and are certified in, said, well, it's kind of like an analogy that makes sense to those people is, if you have four tires and you're driving down the road, and I'm not sure where you live, but in our roads here in northern Illinois, they get a little rough in the wintertime.
Yep.
And as you're bouncing along, sometimes that tire could be misaligned. And so if that tire stays crooked like that, that one tire is going to wear out faster than the other three. And like, okay, that makes sense. And so it's not just put it back in place temporarily, but realign it so that it breaks down and wears at a normal rate. And so if
Yep.
that tire is left crooked, it's going to keep breaking down. Same thing with the neck or the low back. And the difference between a tire and us is that we are living beings with the ability to heal. You know, the innate intelligence in every cell of our body, versus a dead piece of rubber can't do that. You could get more miles out of that tire, but we can actually regenerate tissue with our body's ability to heal itself. Like, if you cut yourself, you don't just think, oh, I guess I'm going to have a hole there, right? You know it's going to heal up as long as it's not too big or infected. So
That I love that analogy. I think everyone can really understand it and get behind it. That makes sense. If something is misaligned, it's like the car. You're going to wear everything else out faster than if it was together the way it's meant to be, the way the vehicle is meant to be run. So I think that's a really great way to put it to folks, and would just love to, get back to some of the modalities. I know that you probably do some really unique things in the office, but what for you has been really, really helpful in aiding in, people's success and feeling better.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. One of the main things with our technique is that we do traction, which helps
Mhm.
to restore the curve. So it's not just an adjustment and then rest for a minute. There's actual anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes of work they have to do after they get adjustment. That's been a part of our practice since day one, and that's very helpful. More recently, as far as like non-chiropractic things that have helped people, I heard a doctor who was probably was a podcast or something I was listening to, and I learned a lot from him about fasting and the benefits of fasting and ways to do it and things like that. And so all of a sudden he started talking about stem cells, and I'm like, yeah, what's he talking about? So I kind of ignored it, and then I finally listened to it, and like, oh, these guys are trying to sell me this device, and they make it sound so good. And so the next day I'm thinking, well, it would help my knee, and it would help this person's that, because there's limits to what we can do. Like the tire, once it's beat up pretty good, we might be able to get it and start restoring it, but there's still some limitations to healing in that case. And so I called him, and Dr. Matt was the guy's name who I talked with, and wow, he's a really good salesman, and he's telling me how great it is and everything. I said, well, tell you what, give me two doctors that I can go and visit. Give me a couple options. If I can go and watch, I want to see what the patients are doing, the doctor's opinion, who's not selling the device.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted that. So the two names he gave me was a aha God moment, because the first doctor it was listed was a doctor that was in my wife's class at chiropractic college.
Oh my
So
gosh.
you're talking about 70,000 people that are licensed for chiropractic, right? And the second one was in my class.
Wow.
So I'm like, whoa, okay, that kind of gave me goosebumps thinking about it. And so I don't necessarily need to drive to Indiana to watch this. I know these guys personally enough that I
Yeah,
can just call them. So
right.
after discussing 20 minutes, it was like, okay, we're going to go ahead and buy this machine. So we bought the machine. It's called a TRT, SoftWave therapy.
Mhm.
And so shockwave is another term that people will use. And we got it in our office. We were like the second office in Illinois to have one.
Nice.
And it was from here all the way to Denver before you could find another one. Now they're all over the place, but this
Yeah.
was in the beginning of 2020, and you might remember something happened that year. And
Yeah,
yeah,
what was that?
there was something that happened. Yeah, so it got to the point where we felt like, well, maybe we shouldn't advertise this,
Mm,
and we should just, because we were, you don't want to be the guy that kills everybody with spreading COVID, right? So especially in the beginning when we knew very little. And so
sure.
we just brought it to the office, and only did it internally, and so just working with patients that were already coming in anyway. And so one of the things that my wife said is everybody should have one of these. Now it's not a cheap device, so that's
Yeah.
one reason why everybody doesn't have one. But it is very helpful for some of those real stubborn conditions, joints like knees and shoulders,
Mhm.
hips even. We've used it pretty much everywhere you can imagine. So
Absolutely. And I've heard a lot of people that have had great success with it, and it's pretty nifty, and it's very. I love your whole story behind it, and I love when things in life, between you and your wife meeting and becoming a chiropractor to getting soft wave, it's such a cool feeling when everything aligns in the right way. So very, very cool. One thing that I really love to talk about, which I'm sure, people have asked you many questions. I think in our day and age where technology is certainly a resource, it can also be a hindrance. There's a lot of misinformation that's spread online about maybe conditions or what you might have. But what are some of the things that people ask you that would be total misconception in terms of maybe what you do, or how things are done, or maybe they're nervous and they heard, oh, well, someone told me that chiropractic care is this, and you're like, no, that is not at all. Erase that from your mind. Let me tell you.
yeah.
So I would love to hear, Dr. Mike, what are some of these misconceptions that you find that you're debunking on a weekly basis?
Yeah, well, I don't know that they would be weekly.
Mm,
Most of our patients are referred. So,
terrific.
some of that is filtered out. So, for example, they already kind of know what to expect when they come to our office. We teach a workshop for all new patients. And so they understand more because, like me growing up, I would go with my uncle and my grandma and my mother to the chiropractor in the neighboring town. And he never once explained anything. And every year I would get ear infections. I remember going into my mom's bedroom, crying in the middle of the night, Mom, my ear hurts. And it seemed like at least once a year, sometimes twice a year, every winter, it seemed like. And eventually I would say, Mom, I need the pink stuff. Like the solution wasn't that I had a subluxation or a misalignment in my neck, and that was causing my neck to be tight and blocking the eustachian tube so that it couldn't drain properly. And then all of the bacteria would grow, and then I'd get an ear infection. It was I need to dump some chemical into that cesspool to kill it so that I feel better, but never really fix the problem. So
Mm,
because of that doctor not explaining to my mom or my uncle that, hey, that boy, even though I was at the office, I never got adjusted. I never got to experience chiropractic. So I guess most people think of it as when I have a crisis, I'll think about it, as opposed to, well, when my engine starts knocking, then I'll think about changing the oil. Like that doesn't really make a lot of sense, but yet we typically take way better care of our vehicles, our houses than we do our bodies, as opposed to it's usually thought of get me out of crisis, as opposed to if my spine is in alignment and I can take on the stresses of the world better. So I guess that would probably be I don't know if it's a pet peeve or whatever, but just my own experience motivates me to want to teach better how your body works, how it heals. It really doesn't need any help. It just needs no interference to do the job that it was designed to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of, rounding out today and, getting some pro tips from you, what is something that you might, commonly give a client or a patient for homework, some things that they should think about, or anything that you could tell us today that would put our health at a better trajectory. And kind of a twofold question in terms of pro tips here, but also just because, you have a great business, a great practice, do you have any also pro tips for other practitioners that are out there that are either, growing their business or maybe something that you have found within yours that has been so helpful, something that you might do every day, that's for you or for a patient, and you're like, this is the best, and everyone should be doing this. So
Mhm.
I'll let you respond.
Yeah, good question. The My one thought was that God knows I learned by the 2x4 method, kind of upside the head, a little slow learner. And for the experiences I've gone through, whether it be positive or negative, have helped me do a better job with patients' issues and concerns. For example, having a curve in my spine, and then how I like to stand inappropriately, how I like to sleep on one side and then get all twisted. And so, a simple thing to do that somebody could do every day. I'll give you two easy ones. Put a real thin pillow between your knees if you're a side sleeper. That minimizes the amount of rotation that you do with your pelvis and then bending your spine. And so you don't have to sleep on your back necessarily. If you do sleep on your back, try to use the least pillow possible. But I really like this one for posture advice. Um, Oftentimes we get in our car and we just hop in and we go and we don't even think about our posture. Or maybe we're sitting too close to the door, too close to the middle because it's more comfortable. So what you want to do is sit nice and centered in your vehicle, adjust your two mirrors to that really good posture. And then when you kind of start being like, yeah, I'm driving down the road in my cool posture, you're like, oh, I can't see anything. It'll remind you to go back to where you should be, especially the amount of time we spend in vehicles, going all over the place. And usually it's a default, or like, for example, I can almost tell when I look at someone's x-rays which side they sleep on because of their spine, how it bends. And so by having the pillow between the knees, that minimizes that. If you have a lamp on one side and say you're reading and you notice that, oh, I do lean this way a lot, try to balance that out. And when you're half asleep, you're not going to remember which way am I not supposed to, but you can remember neutral. Neutral is an easy thing to remember.
That's really cool. I love one great pro tips, Dr. Mike. I think it's, something that's easy enough that everyone can take action on, and also a little bit passive. When you're in the car and you realize
Yeah,
you can no longer see out of your like left hand mirror and you're like, oh, it's because I'm slouching.
yeah,
It just, you don't even think about it. It's like I have to sit this way so that I can, merge in the correct lane without hitting people,
right.
So really, really, really awesome pro tips. I appreciate you being here today. One thing that I'd like to do, if you could tell everyone, whether they're a different practice owner or, someone that just has some questions, would love to reach out to your practice. What is the best way in doing so?
Yeah, we do have a pretty decent website. It's the letter P and then the word chiropractic.com. And then our phone number, of course, 815 947 3320. And I can always leave a message if we're closed that day. So, but we can always get back. You could email me, just DRMIKE. So Dr. Mike at the letter P and then chiropractic.com. So a couple easy ways.
Cool. Awesome. Well, Dr. Mike, this has been an absolute pleasure, and appreciate all the pro tips that you have given us today, and a lot to chew on and think on and maybe sleep better on with a pillow between our legs.
Yeah, hopefully.
Thanks again, and hope you have a great day.
Yeah, appreciate all you do.